So I give you Mike Newton.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay at the back? Yes? Good. My week was going very well until Wednesday morning. I was so looking forward to hearing Peter speak about the dream this weekend, and then I got a call from Sarah to say could I do the speech instead. So my week was turned pretty much upside down with putting a slideshow together and putting some words to go with the slides. So what follows is a hybrid between some notes that Peter passed through to me by email and some pictures that he sent, which we added to our collection at home, and also some work that Vivian and I have been doing in the northwest aside from the dream, but in the same general area. Peter's introduction to the talk said, "From the Earth Light, ex terra lucem," a talk about the British landscape zodiac and the amazing significance of the dream, a sculpture sitting at the Alpha Omega position on the zodiac at Orion's finger point. This position, together with the twin in London, marks the beginning of a new great age, a 26,000-year cycle. Both are key to creating such an age. So if we start with Peter's British landscape zodiac, many of you will be familiar with this, but I confess it's taken me a long time to get to grips with it. As a keen astronomer for many years now with Vivian, the layout of the landscape zodiac here I found somewhat confusing for quite a while. And then we were on retreat on Iona with Peter and Sarah last autumn, and he laid it out on the floor and all became clear. But the trouble was it only remained clear for a couple of days and I forgot about it again and then had to re-remember it all for today. So I went back to Peter's book from 2017, which is his explanation of the British zodiac and how he came to it. And if anybody's interested in taking it further, I would really recommend you get in touch with Sarah and get a copy of this, because it does give the background story to how they set up the analysis for the British landscape zodiac. And I think it's true to say that Peter started through the Watling Street connection with the Irish landscape zodiac, moving that through to High Cross, and then the line of the Watling Street moving down to London, following the route of the A5, Watling Street, the Great Road, or the sacred spine of Britain, I think he calls it. He started the zodiac basically at High Cross in Leicestershire, where the A5 Watling Street crosses the Fosse Way, and that was regarded as the sacred centre of Britain at that time. And with a few more clues that he was able to pull together, for example, he identified the site of the Pleiades as the Llangollen in North Wales, adjacent to the A5.
Mike, you have the pointer there if you want to use it.
Thank you for reminding me. Pleiades, Llangollen in this area here, A5 running to Anglesey, Holyhead, through High Cross, and then down to London, and actually extending a bit beyond there as well. So Peter, over many years, was able to pull this zodiac together, and once he'd got some principal points in there, including Stratford, he identified here with the star Deneb in the constellation Cygnus, the Swan. The Shakespeare connection came through very strongly there. So he was able to lay it out, and then he was able to identify the zodiac constellations, the 12 constellations of the zodiac, and those are the the blue-coloured constellations on the diagram there. And he pulled it together over a period of years. When he got the basic layout, the principal thing to do at that point is then to mark off the Milky Way on that zodiac, because the Milky Way gives 2 key points on what's called the ecliptic. The ecliptic is that circle there, which is where the sun and all the constellations lie in the sky, and this dotted line here represents the centre line of the Milky Way. So if you imagine you are standing at High Cross and you are facing northwest rather, up to this area here, then the Milky Way effectively comes over your left shoulder. Comes over your left shoulder. And this is Cupid's bow and string. This is the bow here, and the string is this line here. And where that line crosses the ecliptic, the line of the zodiac constellations here and here, are what are called the 2 alpha omega points, the AA points in Peter's terminology. So that is the AA line. The 2 fixed points in that zodiac. Now, Peter's work over many years led him to believe that the AA point here in London was based at the White Tower, at the Tower of London, based on ancient mythology, the legend of the Holy Head of Bran, for example, all that sort of stuff. The White Tower in London. But where that AA point there was a mystery. He couldn't work it out. But if we come in a bit, if we narrow it down a bit to the northwest sector, here's High Cross here, and here's the AA point here. Where is it? Geographically on a map. I mean, it's interesting that we have here the Pleiades based on Llangollen. We have Arbor Low here, part of Ursa Major constellation, the Great Bear, the connection there with Great Bear wisdom in Peter's view. And we have the Bull's Horn in Taurus, Al-Nif. That is the confluence of the Mersey and Weaver rivers, a very important point, Peter thinks. Then we have Capella in Auriga, which may well be Beeston Castle in Cheshire, a very old Stone Age site. And we've also been successful, we think, in identifying that Sirius up here in the Dog constellation is at Morecambe Bay, Evesham. St Patrick's Chapel, a very ancient Neolithic site up there. And it's mirroring this thing, as above, so below, in the landscape. Peter struggled with the location of that until 2009, when he and Sarah found out about the Dream sculpture that had been installed in 2009 on a site in St Helens in Merseyside. And the key esoteric point about this is that Orion's finger points to that point on the AA line. If I just turn that slide through 90 degrees, here's Orion here, slightly stretched. There's Orion's belt, the 3 stars. Orion's right shoulder here, and his arm coming round like this, pointing overhead to the AA point. And the key thing about that is that when the midsummer sun is overhead at that AA point, and the midwinter sun is aligned with the other AA point in London, that's the start of a new great age. And that is what is happening right now. We're at the dawn of a new great age because of the alignment of this AA line and the midwinter and midsummer suns. Very crucial period in our history. These things only happen, it's the start of a new great age, 26,000 year cycle. This is all tied in with the precession as the Earth wobbles on its axis. Geographically, we're here. Liverpool here, Manchester. This is the M62. M6 running north-south. We live somewhere over there, just about. We're about an hour away from this area here. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, this is the very northwest of England. And slightly closer in, St Helens, Prescott, M62, and the dream sculpture that Peter and Sarah found. Well, I didn't find it. It had been erected. They didn't have to find it. It was there. They just had to go and see it. It's just about there where the B and the 5 are on that road. In a wonderful landscape park. So you approach the dream through a recovered mine area. It was the Sutton Park Colliery until it closed in 1991. And at the time it was the third largest pit in the Lancashire coalfield, producing about 600,000 tonnes of coal a year. Closed in 1991. Still with 30 years of reserves underground. There's still plenty of it to go, but that was the way that the industry was going at the time. So the pit was closed, the machinery was all moved away, and the pit shafts were capped off. And over a period of time, to the credit of the mine workers' welfare units up there, the St Helens Miners' Welfare Clubs and all that sort of thing, they decided they wanted a permanent memorial. First of all, to all the people who had lost their lives underground over all the industry, over all the years in getting the coal out, but also they wanted it to look forward. They didn't want it to be some Victorian type monument to the fallen in the pits. They wanted it to be a looking forward monument as well. So they commissioned artists who produced artworks as you walk through the place. A tribute to pit canaries there, who were the early warning system of fire damp in the pits to the miners. And you process through this wonderful landscape now, with trees, copses, meadows, wildlife of all description. And you come across this wonderful hint of what is to come. And this is the dream sculpture. Quite amazing. 20 metres tall, 66 feet. That's Sarah there at the bottom putting lanterns out for one of our visits on the Wheel of Life cycle. And it sits on a small hill in this sort of 80-acre former coal mine area. It was designed by Spanish artist Jaime, I can't get this right, Jaime Plenser is the guy's name, and it's actually modelled on his daughter, a 9-year-old daughter, who is dreaming her future. Her eyes are closed, she's in a meditative state, and it's just absolutely beautiful. Looks even better on a day like that, obviously, so we were very fortunate that day. The scale of the thing, when you first come across it, is really quite extraordinary. Very beautiful. And she is looking back down the AA line, back towards London, to the south-southeast. The alignment is really very good. I don't think for 1 minute they had that in mind when they were siting the sculpture, but it really is quite magical how it's placed. Close-up view of the face. There's as much work underground apparently as there is above ground, or nearly twice as much underground as there is overground. There's nearly 40 metres of concrete works underneath this to support it. And it's covered with white Spanish stone which sparkles in sunlight. It really is quite an amazing sculpture. It looks good in all weathers. We've seen it in all conditions: rain, sleet, wind, howling gales, thunder and lightning, very often within 5 minutes of each other. But in the dark like this, it really is quite something. There's a view down to the southeast from the main circle there. And that's this is the view I like particularly, the view of the hair of the young girl tied into a bob at the back of the neck. It really is exquisite detail. So it's entitled The Dream, and it's a memorial, but it also represents darkness transmuted to light, ugliness and dereliction transmuted to beauty. And Peter and Sarah's view is that it is an appropriate white lingam. The lingam stone is similar to herald the new age, the age of light, brought in and put here at the AA point. Absolutely stunning. So wherever Sarah Dawkins is, pan you with me, follow. This is Sarah here at our visit back in April of this year. Charlotte there as well, Jane Lewis and Richard. One of our regular visits to the Dream. Peter encourages us to make pilgrimage to the Dream, to meditate, to dream the golden age to come. Dance, sing, make poetry, read poetry, draw and act. It's important to balance the two poles of the AA line, to keep the AA line in the northwest in balance and harmony with the AA point in the southeast, and to keep the AA line itself vibrating with energy. And as we do work with these 2 points in London and in St Helens, through High Cross, we energise the line and we bring balance to the whole country. So that's the Peter's comment on the Dream as a final comment. He sees it as a marker for the new great age. And he says, I cannot think of a better symbolic marker for the Gemini-Taurus AA point of the British zodiac. The marker of a new great age beginning, a dark age being turned into a golden age, a phoenix rising from its ashes, a polluted planet about to be transformed into a clean world of harmony and beauty. And for him, the miraculous appearance of this AA marker is a sure confirmation that these things will indeed be so. So quite clearly keen on the place. Now, when we were there in April, we were having our usual coffee and carbohydrate treats afterwards in a local cafe, and we picked up a leaflet for a talk at the Prescott Festival, and it was billed as a talk by Salford University archaeological team about the new Prescott Shakespearean Playhouse. So here's just a reminder of where we are. As I said, the Dream sculpture is here, and Prescott is here, 3 miles away. So it's really within striking distance of the Dream. So it's still within that same AA point area. And what I want to just bring your attention to is Knowsley here, more famous now for Knowsley Safari Park. But that is the ancient seat of the Derby family. Knowsley House is their ancestral home. The Derby family feature heavily in what's to come. So we asked ourselves, what's going on in Prescott? We haven't heard about this before, what's happening? just 3 miles from the Dream. So Vivian and I and Jane investigated, we did some research, we attended the talk, which was a complete waste of time as it happened, but we attended the talk anyway. And we looked around, and what is interesting, something wonderful this way comes. Now Prescott is a town that's a bit on its heels at the moment. It was very big in the coal industry, as you would expect, being so close to all the collieries of the St Helens coalfield in Lancashire. They were very famous for clock and watchmaking back in the day as well, but that all went away at the early 1900s. And their big industry was cable making, but there again that died away about 25 years ago. So the place has seen better times, but it has a beautiful 14th century Grade 1 listed church, sandstone church, really superb inside. And also it has a bit of history. And there's a red plaque in the small town at the top end. Near here stood the first freestanding purpose-built playhouse outside of London. Built 1596 to 1603, it was linked with the Earls of Derby, who were patrons of William Shakespeare. Now, Derby, we're talking here about the wonderfully named Ferdinando. Sounds more like a Brazilian footballer than an Earl of Derby, but this is Ferdinando, the 5th Earl of Derby, Lord Strange. And Lord Strange's players were one of the troops of players who performed early Shakespearean plays. They were a travelling troupe of players, although I think they did start at the Rose Theatre in London. But they had a very strong connection with Prescott. And in London at that time, at the end of the 1500s, there was a lot of problems with plague, bubonic plague. So the theatres were closed for quite long periods at times. And the only way the players could make a living was to come out to places like Prescott to play. And of course, with the Earl of Derby being a strong patron of Shakespearean performance, the Prescott Playhouse was one of the only theatres where they could play. And there's evidence that Strange's players did play there, as you would expect, along with a couple of others, including these guys, the Lord Chamberlain's men. They also played at the Prescott Playhouse, apparently. And subsequently, I think the Lord Chamberlain's men became the Lord's men, and they had, ultimately, I think they had exclusive right to perform Shakespeare. I'm not too sure about that. It's something I read recently, but I haven't been able to verify it. But whatever it is, Prescott has a history with Shakespeare. So they've all got very excited about this. And here's something that you will not ever have considered before. The fact that London, Stratford and Prescott would ever appear in the same sentence. But there you are, there you have it. So they call it the Shakespeare Triangle. Now, if you imagine Prescott, London, Stratford, Shakespeare Triangle, fine. But esoterically, it's very interesting as well, because Peter would regard the AA line as anchored, maybe at the Globe with the Shakespeare connection in London, with Prescott with the straight Shakespeare connection in Prescott, and also, if you remember the bow in the landscape zodiac, where Cygnus is in the swan, that's bang on the bow line. So it's like Shakespearean strengthening of that bow structure in the landscape zodiac. It's quite amazing how it's come together. So when you hear of the Shakespearean triangle over the next few years, you'll know what the third element of the Shakespeare triangle is.
We're the first to know.
And you're the first to know. Although this is on a hoarding in Prescott. The Prescott people know about it already.
Well, outside of Prescott.
And that's it. That's the proposed new Shakespeare Playhouse in Prescott. It's a 350. It's a replica of the Inigo Jones Cockpit Theatre in London from about 1615, I think. And it's octagonal in shape, and it will be in a box and performance will be in the round. They haven't got any plans left of the original Prescott Playhouse, unfortunately, so they've gone to the similar period for the Inigo Jones Cockpit Theatre. The good thing about this is there will also be an international graduate school for masters in in Shakespeare performance studies. So tied in with Liverpool John Moores University to put on Shakespearean performance courses for master's degrees. It's incredible.
So what did you say was the name of the university?
Liverpool John Moores.
Thank you.
So they've got the money, they've got the planning consent. When we were there the other day, they're about to start drain diversion work on this site. It is now a car park. It's all fenced off. And the archaeological talk that we went to back in June was all about the sewers running under that site. So nothing at all about the original theatre. This is at the other end of the, sorry, I'm pointing at my screen here. It's not good. This is at the other end of town. This is this will be like a quarter with the church. So we'll have the church here, and this beautiful new theatre and college building in Prescott. £24 million project. Also upgrading infrastructure as well. It's a real success story, built around around Shakespeare. So the locals are getting well up with their marketing. This is the craft brewery and gin bar called the Bard nearby. That's actually quite near to where they think the original Prescott Playhouse was, near where that red plaque was. But I won't tell you for modesty what the current occupant of the site is, but that's not it. And Mr. and Mrs. Oops. What's happened there? That's it. Mr. and Mrs. Hamlet opened a little cafe as well, quite near to the new playhouse. To eat or not to eat, that is the question. So you can see they're getting really involved with it. When you talk to people up there, they are really, really looking forward to it. I do have one more. That's it. So I think it's a wonderful result, if you like, of the momentum built up from the installation of the dream sculpture on that site nearby. Peter has a view, I think, and I agree with, that if you build great art, whether that be sculpture or landscape or buildings in any area, then it will attract more great art. And the dream sculpture has kicked off this amazing project, which will be transformational for the whole area, I'm sure. And this was the project title for the dream sculpture when they first kicked it off, when they started building in 2007. So that was the project name, From the Earth Comes Light. So that's it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Mike. That's absolutely fascinating. I love the way the dream, it sort of reminded me of some of Peter's simulacra, which is rather interesting. So we're still creating them, we're creating them now, which is really lovely, I think. And also, I was struck by the sort of great mystery we have of how these extraordinary landscape, the zodiacs and other things are laid out. And it seems to be not, it's with human involvement, but guided by something greater, because, as Mike said, they probably had no idea how important the position of that dream sculpture was. But they put it in just the right place, and the same at the right time, and the same with the theatre. And it's just so exciting that we've got another Shakespeare theatre up in Prescott, in St Helens. Fantastic. Anyway, thank you very much, Peter, and thank you, Mike, for those lovely talks.